Okay, I'm very excited. I've got Godless Granny with me. Thank you so much for being here. We've had a few problems last week. I gave you the wrong time. This week, I gave you the wrong time. You've been really patient. Uh, Godless Granny, thank you for being here.
You're most welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I don't like to do long intros. I'm a Muslim. On my stream, I invite people with complete different perspectives on important things about life. I don't want to have these just random academic discussions, although some people might see the current discussion as sort of academic. I'm really excited about this topic because it brings up really important things that I think are life changing. Um, and with that kind of before my standard thing is to play a YouTube video by somebody on the internet. We've got a famous person here, Godless Granny, on the internet joining me directly, and we can talk about her video about why God ain't great, why God is not great. And she makes a great video, and I would say lots of Muslims don't actually know the answer, so that's why it's another reason why it's important as well. um, to her video. But um, I like to say, I want to say something quickly and do something slightly different to what I normally do by playing a little pop song that I just heard. And I just felt because Godless Granny ends her videos, and she hasn't heard, we haven't really talked before, so she hasn't heard this either. But I just mentioned that, and she said she's good, cool with me doing whatever crazy stuff I want. Well, not ever crazy stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Okay, so I'm going to play this video, and it's going to be about what I think possibly what both of us are aiming for. Like, we want, I think we both want ourselves and our viewers to have a beautiful life. And we've just got different ways of going about it. And maybe you'll learn something from both of us. And maybe I think I'll learn something from Godless Granny, maybe vice versa. Let's play this video quickly to see what Goddess Granny thinks about this awesome, what I think is an awesome video. Let's go. Tell me what it takes to get you feeling alive. Tell me how to show you it's a beautiful life. I'll do anything to pull you into the light, 'cause everything will change when you open your eyes. Yeah. So don't you let the sunlight get out without you. Don't you realize how lucky we are? Open up your heart, baby, let it all go tonight. Live your life like you was running out with a light. We gotta scream it out. Are you feeling this beat? What do you think, Goddess Granny?
It sounds good. The one thing I was concerned about, I was worried about whether or not it was your stream was going to get shut down for playing
Yeah, I bet it's
copyrighted music.
too much copyright. Okay, that'll be
Yeah.
1 minute of it. You're more of a pro, and I was enjoying the clip too much. But there are very, what I would call Islamic ideas, like living life as if it's running out and things like that, and the whole idea of like opening your eyes. That's what we're trying to do, right? In different ways, we've got different perspectives. What are your thoughts on the stream? Oh, sorry, on the video, on the pop song.
It sounds good. I like it.
Cool. All right, let's get into your clip. So yeah, hopefully it won't be shut down for copyright. Okay.
Well, my clip isn't copyrighted.
Yeah, your clip. Your oh, sorry, I meant like I was still thinking about what
Oh,
you said.
well, well, while that was playing, I that's what if you saw me moving my hands around and clicking on things, it's because I moved over to YouTube to see if you got shut down and you didn't.
Oh, okay. They're that quick. Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it can be that quick.
Wow, you definitely know more about this stuff than I do. I'm like, my wife said the same thing. Are you sure? Like, and I said every week I play somebody else's clip, and I was like, hopefully I'll be fine.
If you're
So
taking them off of YouTube and they're not music, you're usually not going to have a problem. It's music that is the major issue.
oh, really interesting. Learning all the time. Okay, so let's get on to this. I'm gonna
Hey,
get it, make sure it's right from the beginning, I guess. Yeah, let's go.
hey, believers. Not just Christians, the Muslims too. If your God needs to be reminded of how great He is,
الله أكبر الله أكبر
He isn't great.
I am the king.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
Live your life.
Alrighty. So it's quite funny as well, right? Okay. As I said to you, Goddess Granny, or I should say Kelly. I'm going to say Kelly. That's your real name. Is that right, Kelly? Am I getting it right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's right. So I think it makes some really important points, and I'm really up for you to say whatever you feel like you need to say, right? And then my quick response is, you're absolutely right. God doesn't need you. Like that would not be a great God if it needs to be worshipped by like essentially ants or less than that comparative to a powerful God. God in the Quran, I'm trying to keep it really short, is the one who wants to do the best for us, gracious, the most merciful, and things like that, and just wants us to do well. And so, just like a parent might say thank you, even though you don't need a thank you, like it's just training you for your own benefit. So, worship is really healthy. Loads of people are realizing this now, like all the fitness gurus and like.
I don't agree with you at all on that one.
Yeah. So I'm
Well,
going
okay.
to
Here's what I mean. If
go for
you come home from work and your wife comes up and bows down and puts her face to the ground in front of you and starts singing about how wonderful you are, is that a healthy relationship?
Oh wow, that's okay. Fantastic way to start, right? So if so there's all the bowing down is an interesting thing as well. Like so I was going for the viewers, are we working through not working through, I've got a document where I listed 7 really interesting reasons why worship is really good for you as a human being. And there's loads of, like, as I say, fitness gurus, they're talking about meditating and things like that. And it's along those lines as well, right? But let's talk about what you just said. Say your wife comes home and she says, like, let's leave the bowing down minute thing for a minute, right? But she just comes in and goes, hey, really good to see you. You're so nice. You're blah, blah, blah. I think that's a really healthy relationship. Okay. And God is also really, in the Quran, really generous. Like anything you do, God's going to do 10 times more than you. And we forget, like, God gave you air, water, endless things that we forget, because it's a strange thing. Like if you get something in high quantities, like air, and you don't have to struggle for it, we easily become complacent about it. So one of the many things what worship does, it just focuses you back on reality, because we could just have stuff and we forget about it. Like, oh, we got air. Oh, that's really good. That's a really healthy thing to be grateful for. So coming back to your quick, trying to kind of home it down to a quick answer, like, yeah, it's really good if people appreciate each other. Like the bowing down thing, we can get to that, but that's actually really healthy in terms of like a yogic movement. Like Islamic prayer has a lot of things in common with yogic form, and that's not surprising, because as a Muslim, I believe that throughout time, God has always been sending teachers, right? So Hinduism, just another Krishna was just another teacher, a prophet, according to me. So yeah, so not surprising. It's not a bad thing for to be, appreciate each other. Yeah.
Okay, let's start by defining worship. What do you see as worship?
I love it. Thank you. That's such an important thing. So worship in Islam is not just words, it's the words, the intentions they create, and then the actions. So like me doing my job, like as I'm a teacher, me doing my job the best that I can to serve my students, that's considered worship. Being a good husband is considered worship in Islam. So it's words, intentions are very important in Islam, and actions are very important in Islam. And all of those things are not just aimless things, it's for the higher goal of unity or oneness. So
you don't just worship your God, you worship your wife, you worship your children, you worship your students, you worship a star athlete, you worship just about anyone.
so let me just like maybe this misunderstood there. So there's only one focus of worship, which is God. So I'm kind to my wife because of God. That's my like an ultimate, like a North Star, right? I've got an ultimate meaning, direction in my life, right? And I'll do my job. Like for example, when I'm teaching, people can't tell like if I'm doing a like somebody might not be able to tell if I'm doing a bad job. Like there's might be not some overview system or something, but God can see everything. So that's the highest standard. And I aim to do my best job because I know God is watching. God knows my mind. God knows my thoughts. And so I could be a bad husband and I could say, oh, nobody's watching when I'm being a bad husband, for example, but God is watching, you see. And so there's that way of looking at things. And it's not just, oh, I'm scared God is going to punish me, although that's a useful mechanism when you don't realize the benefits of being good, essentially. But it's the initial purpose of worship is oneness, and oneness with everything and oneness with God, but essentially oneness with God. That's a really important thing. It's like, are you a Star Wars fan?
Well, let's
Okay,
finish
I won't go into
defining
it.
what worship is, because you defined worship as anything that is good for anyone. And when
No.
I pointed out that doing something for another person, are you worshiping this person? You're saying no, it's only what's directed at God.
Yeah.
So when you do something and it's directed at God, that's worship. But when you do the exact same thing and it's directed at another person, that's not worship. So
Yes.
so you're
So
defining
intention
worship
match.
as being only with relationship to a God.
Yeah, it's like if so let's say I was doing my job as a teacher only for money, then my God at that point would be money. But if I'm doing, I've got like to be a secondary thing would be to do it for money, but the main goal is to do a great job because God loves me to do a great job.
Well, hold it. Wait a minute. Let me ask this.
Yes.
Suppose you did a great job because you loved your students and you wanted them to succeed.
Yeah.
Is there
Sure.
something does that make your students a god?
That's an interesting way of putting it. So the way I would say it is that why would you love your students? Right? Might sound strange, some of these things. Like a lot of
There's
atheists.
nothing wrong with loving your students.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay. But let me put it this way. It's only so I've been brought up in England, right? And I've seen as society becomes more atheist, we become more disconnected. Like in theory, it's like, oh yeah, everybody loves everybody, but actually what happens is we feel disconnected because there's no point. Like, what's the point of life? It's just random. We're randomly here and we'll be randomly gone, and it doesn't matter. But when you believe in God, you're connected through God as all children of God. Right, and we all feel connected and in a meaningful way, and therefore it helps us love each other. Like I'm in a Muslim country right now, Jordan, and we're told we're all connected, we're all brothers and sisters, and we should say peace be upon you, for example. We all feel connected. You don't have that in countries that become increasingly godless.
You talk for so long that I've kind of lost my train
Oh,
of thought there. That
okay,
first of all,
you're gone.
just because you are correct that society is becoming increasingly disconnected, and it's also true that societies are becoming increasingly secular. But just because there is correlation doesn't mean there is causation. There's a number of reasons why societies are becoming more disconnected. Social media is something that is really disconnecting us. It's supposed to be connecting us, and right now at this moment it is connecting you and me, but at this moment it's also disconnecting me from my own family. And that's exactly what we're seeing with social media, is people are getting involved with so many people online, and they're disconnecting with the people that are right around them. People are having fewer relationships with the people around them. But I also would like to, did you see the Netflix miniseries Adolescence?
No, I don't have Netflix.
Okay. If you get a chance, you might want to see it because it's excellent. And it's about a 13-year-old that murders a classmate in the UK. And as they are investigating, why did this happen? And what is going on in the children's lives, you discover that there's this huge disconnect between the parents' generation and the children's generation. And the reason for the disconnect is because they're speaking different languages. And they don't even realize they're speaking different languages because the children have learned this whole new language through social media that involves emojis and slang words. And they're using these, when they write something out, the parents are reading it and not realizing that the kids are saying the opposite of the words on the screen. And there's this complete disconnect. So I don't think you can blame the disconnect between people on secularization.
Okay, so you're blaming, for example, like social media and technology.
I think it's a systemic problem of society and where our society is today. I don't know what all the causes are. I know that social media is one of the causes.
I think social media only affects people when they misuse it, and particularly broken families, you describe it as, where they don't have time for their children. Because I don't think children are I have 4 children, right? And I don't think they speak another language entirely. They might be using a few phrases, but if you don't have time for your children, that's the real problem. It's not like they suddenly start being Chinese when you're speaking English or something. So I think that's an exaggeration. It's just anything, like all of this, all the internet is amazing potential, but like the most common thing on the internet is porn, right? Does that mean the internet is bad? No, it just means you can misuse it. I'm trying to be shorter this time.
You know, obviously, it's not an issue for everyone, and obviously it's not affecting every single word that you say. But my youngest son will bring up things, and Mom, do you know what that reference is? No, I don't. And Mom, do you know what this means? No, I don't. And yeah, that happens a lot, and it's the way it is.
Oh, like, so he will say something in his young people speak, as it were.
And then ask me if I know what it means. And I'll tell him, no, I don't.
And then what he'll do, he'll tell you, because you're a good mom and you spend time with him, and you'll be like, oh, okay, that's what it means. Fine. Done. Now you're on the same page.
Right. But the problem arises when people read it or hear it and think they know what the children mean, but in fact they don't.
Yeah, because they haven't spent time with their kids.
Well, not necessarily. That isn't necessarily the issue. I mean, you could be spending time with the kid, and the kid could be telling you something, and you think you're understanding, but you're not.
Yeah. But I think this is almost becoming theoretical, because it's like, if you had that problem with your son, you probably feel like, probably haven't spent enough time with my son, like that I haven't understood what he's saying. Like, you're going to breakfast,
Okay.
having a conversation, and you suddenly he's speaking another language. That doesn't happen. He's just like, if he's throwing in a few words here and there, you'd be like, oh, what does that mean, son? And then you would understand. But anyway, I don't want to go over the same thing. I'm just sharing this document because maybe it'd be useful to whiz through some of the 7 reasons I've come up with based on the Quran. So it's got a whole bunch of references to the Quran at the bottom there as well. And you've got links as well for people who've never read the Quran. It's all online. You can just click on it and it will go to verses of the Quran that I think are relevant. But I just thought, when I played your video and you played some, like, for people who don't know what was in the video, people praying at Mecca, for example, all together united. I thought, oh, I mean, I get your point, but I feel like you really missed something, like something really beautiful. And sometimes it hits home when somebody who's also an atheist says quite the opposite. So I'm just going to quickly play, and I think it's kind of interesting, rather than me just talking. I think Joe Rogan is an atheist, from what I've heard from him talking, right? I sort of play
I don't
maybe.
think he is.
Really?
He's had a lot of believers on his channel, and he seems very impressed by what they have to say. The reactions that he has do not look like the reactions of someone that was an atheist.
But he asked questions. I'm not an expert. I don't know if he's explicitly said his position, right? But it's true. He does have believers. He has a lot of, let's say, right-wing people. So it just does seem to reflect some of his thoughts. But like, he does ask questions in a way that you're just not necessarily agreeing either. So maybe he's just pretending to be open-minded. I don't know. So stop quickly this, but I'm just going to play the video. Like, he says lots of things about Muslims in good ways. He's definitely not a Muslim. So like he's going to say in this clip here, right? So Joe Rogan on Muslims. He says a lot of nice things about Muslims and prayer, which is really interesting. But I'll just do just the one that's got the Kaaba, the kind of central kind of block in the middle, where people congregate around. So let me just rewind it a little bit to the beginning. It's a very short clip. Go.
When you watch the Muslims gather around Mecca, go around the Hajj, circle, you don't think there's something kind of beautiful about that, amazing about that? They all peacefully get there, they all dress the same, and they all like move around this thing and show respect. Obviously, it's doing something for them. It has this profound effect on them. When you watch.
That's it, really. Like, people can take different things from the same ideas you had and say, oh, wow, there's something really uniting, so simple. Like, people who don't know, men and women have to wear simple clothes, like, so you don't have the difference between rich and poor and things like that when you go for this pilgrimage at Mecca. It's a really beautiful thing. Like, do you know, what's his name, Malcolm X? Do you know, like, what happened to him when he went to, like, he thought you couldn't be side to side with white people. He turned up to Mecca and he realized, like, white people are not all racist and they could be your brothers in humanity. And he completely changed his point of view. Like, these things actually have an effect, this uniting thing. This is what I said worship is about, uniting people. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, what
you can do the same thing at an atheist conference. I find an atheist conference to be uniting. And we try to include people of different races and different ethnic backgrounds and different sexualities. And that's something you will not find at a Muslim gathering. People of different sexualities are not welcome. People of different faiths are not welcome.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So, I mean, I brought my lesbian friends to our conferences and things like that, right? And we, as Muslims, we invite people with different backgrounds all the time. Oh, sorry, I said Muslims. Maybe I should probably bring it in. I'm an Ahmadi Muslim, where like internationally, I don't know, well-known motto is love for all and hatred for none, right? So, and we're always doing peace conferences and things like that. But I mean, I get that there are Muslims, and I can't account for all Muslims. I can account for what the Quran teaches about being kind and generous to all people, right? And freedom of religion and things like that. So it means that, yeah, people can have whatever their beliefs are. And Prophet Muhammad's example, peace be upon him, was always lots of kindness. He's in the Quran as Rahmatul Alameen, which means a mercy to all of creation, dogs, cats, human beings, trees. He's well known for being very kind to trees and stuff like that. So yeah, my point with the Joe Rogan thing is, let me come to your point about feeling joy or united in an atheist conference. That's a great thing. That's a really nice thing. I'm not against it, but you could also equally appreciate that we can feel connection at this pilgrimage. So I'm just saying,
so the important thing here isn't worship. The important thing is connection with other human beings.
Cool, right? And so, like, why is intention or your words important? Why would meditation be considered really important to so many non-religious self-help gurus?
I have no issues with meditation. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with gods.
Okay, so that would make you sort of biased in a way. It's like, this is a sort of meditation, and you should at least appreciate that meditation is helpful and thankfulness is helpful. So I might quickly just
I did say those are true.
Oh. So sorry, say again. I didn't understand.
I did say meditation is helpful. I did say meditation was a good thing.
Great.
I said it also has nothing to do with gods.
So it can be, and I would say, so I'll go through why it's particular. You're making great points, actually. So all I was just saying was, if there's a meditation that relates to God, we shouldn't discount it because it's still meditation. We should go, oh, I like the bit about meditation, but I don't like the big thing about God for whatever reason, right? That's what I'm saying. But I would say, and let me just get back to...
Well, I didn't say that, but if you want to make that claim, that's fine.
Oh, okay, cool. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something you're saying, right? And this is a great thing about like a YouTube stream like this, is I might not fully understand exactly what you're saying. I hope I will benefit from some of the things you're saying. But at the same time, like, anyway, so hopefully if I don't benefit, somebody else hopefully will benefit more. That's my point on these kind of public streams. But anyway, coming back to this little document, so you said and I'm not going to go in order. I'm just going to respond to some of the things you just said. So you said you could do meditation without God, and God is an unnecessary, even bad. Am I saying this right? God is an unnecessary and even bad part of the meditation process. Would that be a reasonable?
No, that is not accurate.
Oh, okay, that's not accurate. What are you saying? Sorry, let me try to understand better.
I'm just saying that a person can meditate and get benefit from meditation, and they don't need a God to do it.
You don't need a God to do it. Sure. Okay. So there's lots of people who meditate, right?
Right.
And I would say that meditation through God is a really helpful technique. And I've kind of put it on, where have I put it? Basically, oh yeah, the gratefulness, maybe the first one, right? So when you want to be grateful, and this is a thing you can't do very easily if you're an atheist, right?
No, I disagree with you vehemently on that point. I have no problem being grateful. Being an atheist has had no effect on my ability to be grateful.
Sure. Okay. So, for example, my point was going to be something like, let's say you want to be grateful for air. Who are you grateful to? Now, if you think it's all random, then it's just like, oh, you got lucky that you're breathing air and it's just a temporary thing. But if you're grateful to a God who's benevolent and giving it to you, it's a much more wholesome, connected feeling. And it's not a random feeling. It actually makes sense. Like when you're being grateful, it's helpful to be grateful to something. It's really hard to be grateful to just random atoms bouncing around, and that caused you to have air. Like, let me ask you a question. Who are you grateful to when you breathe in air to?
Okay, let me ask a different question first. What on earth does this have to do with the topic?
So gratefulness is part of what worship is. It's like
but the topic is, why does God need to be worshipped?
Sure. So maybe I should come back to that. Maybe I never said it. God doesn't need us. We need God. Worship is just something that's good for you, that God teaches you.
So the answer to the question is God doesn't need to be worshipped, and that's the end of the topic.
Perfect. No, it's not the end of the topic. It's like an opening to encourage people to think about it.
So you gave me this topic of telling me that we're going to address why does God need to be worshipped, and you're going to begin by dismissing it by saying God doesn't need to be worshipped, and now you want to talk about something else, not what you asked me to come and talk about.
Okay, so like talk about it how you like to, and then I'll respond to each bit.
Talk about what?
How would you like to, like, you must have some ideas, right? I've just told you, like, I don't want to make up answers. So the answer is,
well, I'm saying you've brought me here on false pretenses. You asked me to come here to talk about why does God need to be worshipped? And then you immediately dismiss your own topic by saying God doesn't need to be worshipped, and you want to talk about something else. You want to talk instead about, what does worship do for people instead?
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm
you've brought me here under false pretenses.
Okay, sure. So you can ask, I'm not stopping you in saying what you want to say. So I've already given an answer, and I think it's a logical answer that God doesn't need to be worshipped. That's the answer.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
you've answered your own question. I guess the show is over.
Okay. So what do you think about my answer? God does not need to be worshipped. If God is all powerful, do you agree?
Well, I don't agree that there is a God. So, since there is no God, no, there isn't an all powerful being. So no, there's no God.
Sure. Okay. So if there was a God, right? Because that's what your point was in your video, I think.
Right.
If there was a God,
why would it want to be worshipped? Right.
Right. And you're absolutely right. You make a great point. God doesn't need to be worshipped. It doesn't even make sense for God needing to be worshipped.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
we've satisfied the topic.
Well, you could see it that way. I can see it as like there could be so many questions. I was hoping the reason why I bring in atheists or people who are completely different perspectives is that they can give the relevant pushback, the detailed thoughts they might have had on it, and then I can, respond to them. So maybe, some people who are Muslim might feel shy about answering or asking a question in a particularly aggressive way or something. And I'll say, go for it. Ask your questions. What's your point? So we can break down, like for example, you said you don't need to be grateful to a God.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I'm trying to.
I said that I'm perfectly capable of being grateful, and I'm just as grateful, if not more grateful, as an atheist than I ever was as a believer.
Okay, great. So, I don't know if this is an unfair question, but who are you grateful to when you're grateful?
Other people in my life.
No. When you're grateful for air, who are you grateful to?
I'm not grateful for air.
Oh,
I don't need to be grateful for air. It's here. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody. Gratefulness is something you express to a person. And there's no point in being grateful for something that nobody did for you. I mean, that's like saying, who are you grateful to because your hair is brown? Yeah, I mean, do you really care if your hair is brown?
Okay, but I really care that I have air, and it's a beautiful, powerful, it's a beautiful thing to be grateful to be focused on it rather than dismissive. Because as soon as you have less air, like you can be ill and struggle to breathe air, then you start appreciating. So I think it's really important. So, and you said you have to be grateful to a person, really? You can't be grateful to a cat when a cat does something nice or something that gives you company? I don't know. So, and I always tell my viewers,
since you brought this comment up, then let's go ahead and talk about it.
Let's answer it.
God needs to be worshipped, or else you grow up to be egotistic, narcissistic granny. Obviously, this person is being rather offensive.
Yeah, try not to
be offensive.
Viewers. Don't say granny, but like I think your point is a good point, though, that you do end up being not.
Okay, so but this isn't talking about what God needs. If I am grateful to God and I'm satisfying God's need to be worshipped, that means somebody else isn't going to become egotistical. Or, you know, if I worship but I don't worship enough and I become egotistical, what does that have to do with God's needs? And finally, why would a God have need of anything? Why would a God even have needs?
Sure. So here's an interesting, you could call it a need, but I don't think that'd be accurate. God would like you as a human being to do well. Like God could create a non-conscious or let's say a creation that could without agency or ability to choose from right from wrong, but he's created that in the hope that you would choose from right, you choose right, and then you would grow, because that's the intention. Like, people might not understand the intention of God when creating human beings. It's not just to be good in this life. The evolution of humanity stretches way beyond death. Like, death is just the first phase. Like, we've already been to as an existence. When we were sperms, we were in a lower form of existence. Then we lost that form. A sperm lost its existence when it's, formed or coalesced with an egg, and it formed a new or started a new level of existence. And then when you die or when you leave the womb, you lose like your umbilical cord and what you thought was life, and you come into another form of existence called humanity. So we've gone through different stages already within our sort of, let's say, previous lives, almost, you can say, where you keep developing to higher and higher forms. And when you supposedly leave this life, it makes sense to say that we're going to continue in a higher form of life. And that's what God wants us, a continuous evolution towards beauty. And God is certainly beautiful. We have an intrinsic connection with God, because we know that, like, when we're in nature, which is a reflection of God, we feel peace, right? So that's what worship is about. Sorry?
Back that claim.
Back that claim. So yeah, back the claim that when we're in nature, we feel more peace?
No, back the claim that there is life after death. I mean, we can see sperm in a microscope. We can see a baby, we can see a fetus in a womb. We can see a baby being born. We have evidence for all of these things, but we have no evidence for life after death.
Sure. So I've actually just given evidence through... No,
you didn't. You talked about stages of life, things that we have evidence for, and then made the claim that there's life after death.
It's called an inference based on evidence. So I give you...
But your conclusion doesn't follow from your evidence.
It does. So I've given stages before our existence as human beings.
But that's not before your existence. A fetus is the human being you become. The sperm is the building. That's like saying, a house can fly up into the air and have life and everlasting because it started as a brick. And we know that there was a brick, and we know we put the wood in there, and we know we put the pipes in there, and we saw all these stages as the house came together. Therefore, if you demolish a house, it goes up into heaven and has life after death.
Sure. Okay.
It doesn't follow.
You can claim it doesn't follow. That's fine. Okay. So I've given demonstrations of a process, and you can go into it. But I want to go, and then the Quran itself talks about evidence of a day of judgment, and the very interesting evidence, which is the conscience.
Why should I care what the Quran says?
No, I'm gonna present the idea. I'm actually, it's the Quran doesn't expect you to care. It just gives you evidence, and you can care if you want or not, right? And the evidence it gives, one of the evidences, is that the conscience itself. Why do we have this very interesting little program implanted in all of us that tells you from right from wrong? Okay, because it claims
we're a social species.
That's not really a reason.
Of course it is, because other social species have the same thing.
No, we have no. They don't have the same thing because, for example, lions aren't vegan and all this kind of stuff, right? They don't make the kind of moral choices that we do. They just.
But they absolutely do.
We don't just simply depend on our basic urges like animals do. But I feel like we're going away from. I want to answer quickly the comment because I value the comments quickly, right? Because we're going on to like, how do you know God exists? Not just God exists, but there's an afterlife and all this other stuff. So very quickly, Bubblegum Gun, I think you do have a really strong point, other than saying the granny thing. Are you a granny by any chance? I'm not sure if that's an insult.
Yes, I have 5 grandchildren.
Sure. But so maybe he didn't mean it as an insult. I don't know. But like saying narcissistic grannies kind of sounds like you're calling Kelly here a narcissist, which is, we try to avoid making that kind of claim, right? But the point is that if you cannot be possibly like even consider like on the face of it that all these things could have been created by God, and you say that it's such a bad thing, and actually realistically the most logical and probable thing is that there is a God, because things don't form by themselves, right? Complicated for things don't form by themselves. We don't have any examples of that, right? So most likely God does exist, and it's a very reasonable thing to be grateful to it. And so why would you be upset by something like that? That's my question. Why would you be upset by something like that? Like somebody reasonably thinks there's a God. I think that's reasonable, right? And if based on their reason they are thankful to God, I think that makes a lot of sense. But also on top of that, you could say like it's a really helpful or healthy thing to kind of think it's not all about you. Because in individualistic societies, we start thinking we're the center of the universe, which is another point I make. Thinking about God takes us out of the center of the universe is a really helpful thing. So what do you think? How do you respond to that? That thinking about God, being thankful for air and so many other things is a helpful thing to take ourselves out of the center of the universe and not be narcissistic. Isn't that true? Isn't that a helpful mechanism?
No.
Oh, why? I've just given reasons why it is. So you have to give me reasons why it's not.
Well, okay. First of all, you spoke for about 5 minutes, so I'm not going to try to address everything you said because I can't remember every word you said. But I don't find it helpful to be grateful to a non-entity. I'm not grateful to Santa Claus because I got presents at Christmas. I'm not grateful to the tooth fairy that I have teeth. I'm not grateful to leprechauns that gold exists. These are ideas that people have that simply aren't true. And I don't see any reason to be grateful that people in the past have had these ideas. Now you made the claim that atheists are self-centered, egotistical, only thinking about themselves, everything for themselves. And I couldn't disagree more. I mean, we are humanists. We believe in the human race. We believe in advancing a number of different causes. Most of us are social justice activists. You'll find a lot of social justice activists in the atheist community, and to accuse us all of being self-centered is a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be an atheist. Because being an atheist simply means you don't believe in any gods. Are there self-centered atheists? Absolutely, of course there are. But are there self-centered Muslims? Absolutely, of course there are. It has nothing to do with self-centeredness. That's a human trait, not a religious trait.
So you said a minute ago that human beings are social, right? Yet they can be self-centered. Yeah. And I'm saying if you have something that unifies us, like essentially God as a parent to all of us, that helps us to be connected. So let me ask you the question. As religious people, we consider ourselves children of God, therefore brothers and sisters in humanity. You could feel this, do you feel like you're my sister?
No.
Okay. So that would be a difference, for example. Like, you don't have that feeling. And I think and it's even a valid feeling, because we are both human beings. How would you respond?
I have different degrees of relationship with different people. I don't know you well enough to say that I feel like you are a brother. Now, if you mean by a brother as a fellow human being, yeah, absolutely. You are a fellow human being, and in that way, yes, we do have that relationship. But do I feel like the same way towards you as to my actual brother? No, absolutely not. We don't have that relationship.
Sure. But I do feel, I can't say it's perfect. I don't have a sister, right? But I do feel that I love you as a sister, and I would love you. And we don't want to put like too many boundaries, like, oh, you're from America, therefore I love you less, or all these other things. Like, I try not to put limitations on how much I love a human being, and I try to do my best as you can. Like, it's a beautiful thing to have all of society feel connected that way. So anyway, that's
okay. Now let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I see on the news women being shot for going to school, because they're Muslim. Women being killed for not wearing a hijab because they're Muslim. People being killed by Muslims because they are gay. People being killed by Muslims because they are atheists. And I realize that you say the Quran says that we're to love all people. And yet there are other Muslims that would disagree with you vehemently and would tell you that, no, we've got a duty to enforce certain rules that God wants enforced. And how can you claim that you are all connected when you aren't even connected with your own brothers in your own religion?
Well, there are, like, I don't know how many billion Muslims, maybe 1 point something billion Muslims, right? So there are going to be people who do something which is exactly the opposite of the teachings of the Quran. And the Quran is the book of rules for Islam, right? So
they're reading the book wrong.
Well, I don't know if they're reading it at all. That's part of the problem. Like, it's hard to read the verse of the Quran that says there's no compulsion in religion and do all the things you're saying. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard to read the book that wrong. It probably require not reading the book.
Okay. Does your God care if you're reading the book and following the book?
God cares about you. That's why God gave you guide
okay, so is God telling the Muslims who are misinterpreting the book that they're not reading it, or they're not reading it correctly? Is he giving them that message?
I would imagine so, because
but they're not getting the message.
No, they probably are, just because then.
So is your God ineffective at communication? Why can't he get the message through to his own followers?
Sure. The answer is free will. So what's probably happening realistically is that they know
Your
that
God is constrained by free will. Your God is so inept at communication that if someone exercises free will, he can't get the message through.
No, he gets the message through. That's what I was saying, but you just stopped me in the middle. But I'm trying not to talk too much. I'm sure, because my experience of God and many other people have endless experiences of God, that we do get the message all the time, right? But we choose to ignore it because, like, just because somebody's a Muslim, they can claim to be a Muslim, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can claim to be listening to God, but they can ignore God at the same time, right? So, and they might have like some benefit from not listening to God in their mind. So like, oh, okay, if I can force women to do whatever I want, I can, I don't know, feel more powerful, whatever it is, right? So I think in practice what happens is these people know they're doing the wrong thing because probably somebody's told them, right? And they said, no, we don't want to listen. And they just carry on doing the wrong thing. They just call themselves Muslims, but they ignore the Quran. I think that's what's realistically happening.
Well, you do recognize that this is systemic in certain countries.
I don't think so. I don't like. So I was
like
going to say
Afghanistan, like Iran.
So I think in a lot of these religions, these places, I'm not going to support everything they do, right? But I think we get the wrong impression as well. Yeah. So some people at some point, like, how do you know? Have you been to Afghanistan?
I have not, but I know people who have.
Right. So you know some people, and you got some information, and there could be counter information, etc., etc. So the point is that, like, especially when we're looking at the media and the news, we get exaggerations of reality. And as I said in the beginning, we've got like over 1 billion Muslims. Most of them don't do what you're saying. In fact, most converts to Islam are women, Western women. So if what you're saying is true, then why would so many women be converting to Islam? It doesn't make sense. So they clearly, all these women who are converting to Islam probably disagree with you.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, so let's quickly answer another great point, coming to essentially what we're doing here at all. It says it's not a false pretense that, you know, I said, why does God need to be worshipped? And I said, actually, God doesn't need to be worshipped. And here's why we need to worship God. That's just, you've misunderstood the subject. And I think we could go into the depth of the subject if you wanted to really consider it. Like, if you could really understand the power of praying, like, it's so beneficial to be grateful. And it's actually harder to be grateful if you don't believe in God. There's so many things
you keep asserting that, and I keep telling you that that is not true. Yeah.
I gave you
not my experience. That is not my experience as a person. I am not any less grateful as an atheist than I was as a believer.
You actually demonstrated the exact opposite a second ago, because I asked you, not a second ago, like maybe a few minutes ago, when I said, who are you grateful to for air? And you said, I'm not even grateful to air. So I'm grateful to air. So I'm one step ahead of you in terms of grateful.
You're grateful to air?
For air, yeah.
Okay, well, there's a difference between being grateful to air and being grateful.
I said earlier on, and you said you were not grateful for air.
Well, yeah, obviously I'm grateful that the air is here, but there's no one to be grateful to for that fact. It's simply...
That's true, exactly. That was my point.
But that doesn't mean I'm less grateful.
No, you just said you're less grateful because you can't.
No, I did not say that. I did not say that. You are making the claim that because I am not grateful for as many things as you are, that therefore I am less grateful. And that's simply not the case. That's not true. I think you're being grateful in a respect that is completely useless and of no value.
It's no value to be grateful for air?
No, it's of no value to be grateful to an entity that doesn't exist. Just as, you know, I'm not grateful to Santa Claus that I got presents at Christmas. And if I was grateful to Santa Claus for that I got presents at Christmas, that would be of no value. You know, no one is receiving this gratefulness. No, what purpose does it serve to be grateful to something that doesn't exist?
There's no comparison between believing in Santa Claus and believing that something as complicated as you and me were created by an intelligent being. That makes a lot more sense than believing in Santa Claus. So there's no comparison. So it's a false comparison. Why would you make that comparison? It's a weak comparison. Why would you do that?
I do that because I do see them as being very similar. Just because people have more complicated ideas about who God is doesn't make him any more real than Santa Claus. It's just an easy example to understand.
It's not a complicated example. It's the obvious example. It's obvious. The obvious thing would be to think that if my phone, I don't know if this will show up, if my phone was made, even though I didn't see the creator, right? I've never been to the factory, but it makes sense to me that it was created. And we have no example of complicated things being made by accidental processes. We've never put it in a lab and saw, accidental things being accidentally made. Yet to think like
actually we do.
No, we don't. But again, give me an example.
Well, okay, now not complicated things being made, but things that are coming into being without being created.
Give me an example. I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, this is getting way into physics that's far beyond my understanding. But I've watched a couple of videos and I've started reading Dr. Kelsey's book on some of the studies of the origins of the universe. And I know that there are particles, subatomic particles. Some of them, they appear and disappear at random. And they do it hundreds of thousands of times per second. And they always appear in pairs, one matter and one antimatter. And they appear and disappear constantly. You can look up videos on this because this is something that is well established in science.
Sure. So you started off by saying there are examples of things that make themselves, and then you immediately said that
no, I did not say that. You keep putting words in my mouth because I make a statement and then you change it to be what you want it to be. I never said we have examples of things making themselves. Now you give the example of your phone, something that is quite obviously man-made, but
Correct.
Who made the rocks? Obviously you would say that it was God. Have you ever seen a God make a rock?
No, I haven't seen.
So how do you know a God made the rock?
Right. So it's called inference. Like I haven't seen the creator of the phone, right?
But again, it's a man-made thing. Of course, man-made things are made by people.
Give me an example. Now, have you ever seen any there's does it make sense to you that through random processes things would start building on themselves rather than falling apart?
Yes, and that we have seen in laboratories as well. For example, when we've taken and put amino acids together, they can start forming and building themselves into longer chains of amino acids. And amino acids can form RNA, and RNA can form DNA. And DNA obviously is the building blocks of life. Now, exactly how did life begin? I don't know. But we do know that when various things are put together in the right conditions, they will start building themselves. We see single-celled organisms build themselves into multi-celled organisms. Yeah, we absolutely see that.
Sure. So that's a claim.
No, that is not a claim. You can look that up and you can find the scientific papers that back that.
Right. So, I mean, first of all, there's lots of scientists who counter, your claim that is true, right? But even logically, if that was true, we would actually see more examples of what you're talking about, right? And on top of that, you said all these.
But we do.
How do we create all these perfect conditions and maintain them, right? It's an incredibly complicated thing. So anybody who knows something about a cell, they'll know it's a huge factory. And to say, you know, that they just form and they just, you know, like you said, you gave the whole story about RNA can form DNA. All these things are incredibly complicated. Like DNA is the most complicated computer program ever to exist, right? Like far more complicated than any, well, let's say David exists, that's a big claim, but far more complicated than any computer program that we've made as human beings. And for us to think, oh, possibly we could have we could have let wind and rain create the computer program would be an insane idea from anybody who's a coder, and I'm a coder, for example, right? And anybody who's not a coder, they look at code and say that will not happen through random processes. So I would say scientifically you're saying something completely incorrect, right? This is just an atheist claim that's made many times, but it's not true. And just logically, it makes no sense as well. So yeah, you can take existing life forms and make them replicate possibly by taking the existing biotechnology, you might call it, to replicate, but then you haven't created it. It's the existing technology that God created.
I do know of one particular paper that I read. Now, I didn't bring a bunch of papers with me because I thought we were addressing the subject, why does God need to be worshipped? I didn't realize that we were going to be talking about abiogenesis and the origins of the universe. But yeah, this paper in particular, that was I don't remember which university, but in 2012, they took some bacteria and they destroyed some of the DNA of the bacteria, and they created some of the protein sequences of the bacteria, and they created some protein sequences that do not exist in nature. And they wanted to know, why are there only like 100,000 different possible protein sequences that exist in nature when there are so many more different possibilities that could exist? So they synthesized their own protein sequence. Then they put it into the bacteria, and the bacteria lived with sequences that they created in the laboratory that do not exist in nature.
Okay, sure. So it lived. I don't know how long it lived or what function it had, right? But so these protein. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to come back to the main topic in a second, but I'll quickly answer what you're saying, right? So first of all, there's good reasons why we don't have these random protein sequences, because they're rubbish, right? They're not much good, yeah? When we have a protein sequence that creates hemoglobin that perfectly or efficiently carries air, that's why it was made, right? And for people who don't know how complicated these things are, even to make a drop of blood, like not even just a single hemoglobin structure, right? It would take longer than the age of the universe if you had it evolved every microsecond. You just wouldn't have enough time, okay? Because it's far too complicated. Just basic maths. There are like 22 possibilities about how each of these proteins can connect with the next, right? And if you did a tiny bit of math, you'd realize that it's impossible even to get a single hemoglobin when you need 5 million of them to make a drop of blood. So you can't even get a drop of blood, never mind a human being or an eyeball or anything, given the whole age of the universe. So logically, it makes no sense what you just said. But I do want to come back to the point of the topic, which is, and you're correct, we need to stay focused on the topic, which is, why do we need to worship God? What's the benefit of worship?
That wasn't the topic. The topic wasn't, why do we need to worship God? The topic was, why does God need to be worshipped?
So as Bubblegum Gun, I think, correctly says, that you just didn't understand the topic well enough, possibly, because
you've got it written right there on the screen. Why does God need to be worshipped? That's what you wrote.
And I answered the question.
So what you're telling me is that's not what you meant.
I answered the question. I'm answering it in an increasingly deep way, right? So one is that God...
No, you're completely changing the question. You're saying God doesn't need to be worshipped, so let's instead focus on why we need to worship God.
Sure. So why
does... It's a completely different question.
You could say it's a different question, or you could understand it as, well, why does God require you to be worshipped? Why would God want that?
And again, that's a different question.
Yeah, you could say that, or maybe you don't want to go into the depth of it, or maybe you want to sidetrack onto just this empty question that has no benefit, can be answered in 1 second.
Well, then why did you're the one that proposed the topic. You're the one that asked me to come and speak on this topic. If it doesn't make any sense and if it's shallow, then you came up with a shallow topic that has no purpose.
You can answer in a shallow way, or you can take it to a deeper level. It's up to you. Yeah. So why you seem to be fearful of kind of discussing it to a deeper level? We're here, and I can give you simple things and to respond to. Yeah. So for example, we can say, like, why worship God at all? Our intrinsic nature is to be attracted to God. And then let me propose this idea, right? Do you know what awe is and the psychological benefits of awe? Have you heard about it?
Are you saying AWE or ORE?
AWE.
Yeah, I know what awe is.
Sure. So
I finished the 4th grade.
Great. So do you know the psychological benefits of awe?
No.
Okay, so by feeling it all, so this is one of the things
I'm really not interested, because you're going to tell me that there's all these benefits, and I understand that. Okay, I don't need you to explain it to me.
Well, lots of people don't know. This is like, not everybody knows everything about psychology.
I really don't care either.
So that's the thing. So really, you kind of have to be interested in the answers, in alternative perspectives. Otherwise,
there is so much knowledge in the universe. There is so much more knowledge in the universe than any one person can possibly understand. And so we have to pick and choose the things that we're interested in and the things that we're not interested in, because I simply don't have time to listen to what everybody else in the world might possibly be interested in. And we all have a finite life, so we focus on the things that we are interested in. And this simply isn't something I'm interested in.
Okay, sure. So I'll quickly say that awe is the feeling or awareness of something greater than you, and that gives so many psychological benefits. It reduces stress, is generally good for your health, etc. And certainly believing in God is certainly something bigger than you, and you feel more connected. This is what psychologists have found. So, and that's certainly what worship is. So it's related to what we're talking about, the benefits of worship. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that you obviously don't really care. You've demonstrated here that you really don't care. So what difference does it make?
About what? Oh, what you think?
Yeah. I've already told you what I think, and you ran right over and said, well, I don't care that you're not interested. This is what I want to talk about. So obviously you don't care what my thoughts are.
Well, I think it's, we've come here to talk about worship, and you seem to be upset about worship, and I'm trying to give you a reason why you should be
upset. I'm not upset about worship.
Oh, okay, but you made a video about it in the beginning. That's what we went through.
I said, yeah, in my video, my whole point of my video is, why would a God need to be worshipped? And your response is, God doesn't need to be worshipped. Cool. End of discussion.
Yeah, sure.
And so now you're wanting to talk about, why would people need, why would a God want people to worship it? Well, okay. If you ever demonstrate that there really is a God, then, I'll consider whether there's a reason for me to worship this God. But until this God shows up and actually, demonstrates that it exists, I have no reason to think that I should worship. Why should I worship something that doesn't exist? Do you worship things that don't exist?
No, so I just gave you a reason why.
Answer that question. Do you worship things that don't exist?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. And so if somebody else came to you and told you, hey, you need to worship Badubadege, and claims that Badubadege exists, and you need to worship it, are you going to start worshiping it just because?
No, I would ask for evidence, and I've just given you evidence that God exists.
No, you didn't. You made claims. You made a bunch of claims that you made what you called inferences, which really are not inferences, because the conclusions you came to did not follow from the evidence that you had.
Sure. Okay, so might as well quickly answer this. Maybe we can wrap it up, because I don't want to take more time than I promised. The dialogue gets interesting when the guest demands that Khalid responds to her points. So I don't know. Did we have a conversation? Did I respond to any of your points?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think you did, but I don't think you did so successfully. Let's put it that way.
I can only try my best, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I appreciate you coming. Hopefully it wasn't, I hope it was a good experience. I mean, for me, it was kind of useful. Maybe we can pick a topic that we completely, I don't know, agree on the direction of the conversation next time, maybe.
Can I respond to the Office of Secular Quranism?
Yeah, sure.
Ask the guest if she is legally trained. Yes, I have a JD.
Okay. Wow, I didn't see. Legally trained. Legally trained in what?
The law. I have a Juris Doctor. I have a doctorate in jurisprudence.
Okay, that's interesting. She's done secular. She's obviously done some research on you more than I have on about your background. Okay. She knew it. She's very pleased. Okay, we'll end on that note then. She's the Office of Secular Quran is trained in law, but I'm not. She's a lawyer as such. But anyway, maybe that's why she's so interested.
Yes, I am a lawyer.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's like she's really happy. There we go. So at least you made her really happy. That's good. And you made me happy for turning up here. We might not have agreed. I think that the viewers would have benefited from our conversation, because I think I made some points, you made some points, and we got some interesting answers. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you so much. Hopefully you'll join me again another time. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.